Hey, Bible nerds, this is Dr. Manny Arango. Welcome to the Bible Department podcast, powered by Arma. We are walking through the entire Bible in a year. You can go to the description or thebibledepartment.com to download a reading plan and join the journey. Family, welcome to day 154. We are trekking through 1 Samuel. We're doing great pace. Come on, we're already at chapter 21. Today's reading is chapters 21, 22, 23, and 24. And if you've done the reading already, then kudos to you. Shout out to you. Everything that I'm going to say in this breakdown is going to make total sense. If you have not done the reading, then stop the audio, stop the video, go do the reading. You don't want to cheat yourself on what the Holy Spirit would want to say to you. So make sure you do the reading, and then you can supplement that reading by watching and listening to this episode. So let's dig into 1 Samuel chapter 21. All right. Not a ton of context clues. Obviously, we're knee deep into the book at this point. You already have a ton of context. So I'll give a few context clues, but we'll spend the majority of our time giving some nerdy nuggets. Okay. So here's the context. David is on the run. Okay. So the geography has shifted from David kind of being persecuted by Saul, but like in his court, in his home. And now David has fled. Okay, he is on the run. He is in the countryside, living in caves. At one point, he's even going to flee the actual geography of Israel. Now, here's something that's interesting. I don't know if you remember this. If you've been rocking with us for a long time. When the people, when Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden, they move east. Okay, so east symbolizes away from God, and then coming back west symbolizes coming back to God. Okay, so Adam and Eve are east of Eden, and they keep moving east, and the further east they go, it's a symbolic representation that humanity is falling further and further and further away from God, and away from the garden that he has for them, and away from the ideal that he has for them. And then when Joshua and the people enter into the land via Jericho, they are coming into the land from the east, and they're moving west, which means they're moving back, not just into the land that God has for them, but back into Eden, back into the garden that is the prepared place that God has for them. So we're going to see the same thing, and I need you to see this context, that as David is fleeing, he's going to flee east. Okay. Now, in chapter 22, we're going to get that he's fleeing to the king of Moab. And the reason that this story is in here is because of the story of Ruth, which we are going to get to. He's moving east out of the land, and this is not good. So finally, right at chapter... It's chapter 22, verse 5. There we go. But the prophet Gad said to David, do not stay in the stronghold. Okay, go into the land of Judah. Okay, so move west. Go into the land of Judah. So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. Okay, so David is so scared that he's moving out of the land. He doesn't realize that he's just moving further and further and further east. And he's so scared of Saul that he's moving away, that the geography is also symbolic of just the covering and the place that God actually has for him. Okay, that God does not want him to completely abandon the land. He really wants him to stay in the land. Okay, that's just a little bit of context. Now let's hit some of these nerdy nuggets. Ahimelech dies. Saul ends up killing about 85 priests. Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, comes and flees to David. People coming to flee to David is actually going to be one of my timeless truths. Now, I need you to know this. Inquiring of God for people is like the ancient form of the CIA. So I don't know if you've ever, if you've ever watched any kind of spy intelligence espionage or like war films, then information is sacred. I mean, being able to intercept information, being able to get information to the people who should have it is a massive part of the strategy of just like winning at war. So the ancient form of that, or the biblical form of that, is inquiring of the Lord, like knowing what God would say in any given scenario, okay? Because God will tip the scales in terms of who his favor is actually resting on. So chapter 23, verse 2, we have David inquiring of Yahweh. And this is huge, that David inquires of Yahweh. And here's one of the timeless truths that I want you to take away. I wrote it down. I kind of want to read it exactly how I wrote it so that you can like get this. Here's just what I wrote. This is, by the way, this is just my journal where I do my devotion. So I just kind of want you to hear it just the way that I wrote it while I was doing my devos. It says this: Saul is listening to other people. David is listening to Yahweh. Point blank, period. If you want to be successful, at some point you're going to have to stop listening to everybody around you. You're going to have to inquire of the Lord, that God has wisdom, that God has strategy, that God has secrets, that God has intel, that God has stuff that he wants to say. And so often it's not even, sometimes there are intelligent, wise, amazing, skilled people who are around, but they just don't know what thus saith the Lord. And there's no substitute for you getting alone with God and finding out like what the Lord would say. And I think that is, if there's a lesson that I've learned throughout the years, is that I'm all about having wise counsel and there being a council of people around me to help me make decisions. But there are some things that I have to hear from the Lord. Now, let me be careful, because what I'm not saying is to disobey your pastor, disobey leaders in your life. Don't listen to wise people and then say, well, I'm listening to God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not advocating for that at all, actually. What I am advocating for is to say, you know what? I do have wise people around me. I am submitted to authority, but I'm not going to use that as a substitute for hearing for the Lord for myself. So Saul is listening to people. David is listening to Yahweh. Family, the wait is over. My brand new book, Crushing Chaos, is out now and available everywhere books are sold. Literally today, I walked into a Barnes & Noble and I signed a bunch of copies at a physical location. So you can grab this book at a physical Barnes & Noble, or you can go to a Books A Million or Amazon or anywhere books are sold and grab a copy. If you enjoy reading the Bible from an ancient perspective, if you understand that the beauty of Scripture is actually knowing it in context, then you'll love this book. And if there's any chaos in your personal life, I think that reading the Bible from an ancient perspective can actually help to crush the chaos in your life. I think this book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. I really do. I think we wrote a good one. I think you should get a copy today. All right. Back to the episode. I want you to, so there's now twice in this section, Saul is dangerously close to being killed by David. And David's men actually want him to kill Saul. Because that's it. All this is over if David kills Saul. And twice, David spares Saul's life. Now, one of those times, we can just go to chapter 24, verse 4. Verse 4 says, the men said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hand. So David's men are quoting a prophecy given to David, okay? This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterwards, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, my Lord, the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down, prostrated himself, faced the ground. He said to Saul, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers comes evil deeds. So my hand will not touch you. So here's the thing that you may not know. Robes in the ancient world are a symbol of authority. Okay, robes signify authority. And so when David cuts the corner of Saul's robe, he's symbolically saying, I'm cutting off your authority. You no longer have authority. This is why, if you fast forward to the New Testament story of the prodigal son, the father put sandals, a ring, and a robe on his son, because he's giving his son authority. He's giving his son back the authority that he's lost because of sin, because of unwise decisions. So David is cutting off a corner of Saul's robe. He's cutting off the authority. If you go back, okay, remember Saul tore a piece of Samuel's robe. And Samuel turned and said, the same way you've torn my robe, God's ripping the kingdom out of your hand. So robes, symbols of authority. And what's remarkable here is that David still sees Saul based on Saul's office. Now, this is where there's a difference between honor and respect. God has not called you to respect anybody. He's never demanded or he cannot command that you respect anybody. But God can command that you honor people. Why? Because honor and respect aren't the same thing. Respect is so I mean, again, spect, look, okay? So like spectacles. So I look again at who you've been. So I can only respect you based on the person you've been, the person you've shown me. But honor is not about how you've portrayed yourself or how you've acted around me. Honor is just simply about the office and the title that you have from the Lord. And so, like my pastor, okay? I honor him as Pastor Robert. That's Pastor Robert. God has given him the title and the office of pastor. Now, before he was ever my pastor, he was a friend, a mentor, someone in my life that I know personally. Now, I respect Robert Madu. I honor Pastor Robert. This has never happened, but in the event that there's something that he may do personally that would cause me to lose respect for him, I still have to honor the office and the title that the Lord's given him. Judges are people who we honor. Police officers are people that we honor. We honor people with titles and offices. It's funny because, I love engaging with Gen Z. And sometimes, people that are a part of Gen Z will be quick to just call me by my first name, Manny. Now, I don't have an issue when people call me Manny if I have not been pastoring them. But if I'm pastoring someone, then I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not Manny to you. Like I'm Pastor Manny. And I love to hit them with this. You can start to see how secularly trained Gen Z is. I'll go, would you ever call a rabbi by their first name? Oh, no, I would never call a rabbi by their first name. Okay, got it. Because our culture has trained you that you can disrespect Christianity, but you can respect Judaism. You would not call an imam by their first name, would you? No, because you respect Islam, you respect Judaism, but you disrespect Christianity. Why? Because we live in a culture that's okay with disrespecting Christianity for whatever reason. We don't disrespect Buddhism. We don't disrespect any other religion, but for whatever reason, we show tons of contempt and disrespect to Christianity. So, honor versus respect. David has seen Saul act disrespectfully. So he doesn't deserve respect. But even when someone doesn't deserve respect, they should be given honor based on the title and the office that God's given them. Why? Because what's going to happen at the end of the story? God's going to orchestrate a scenario that kills Saul. So God is the one that has the ability to remove leaders. God does that. So if somebody's acting in a way that's dishonorable, I don't need to lift a hand. I don't really need to do anything. Like, life will catch up to that person. My job is to honor and let the Lord do what the Lord is going to do. So kind of went on a bit of a tangent, but I think that's good. Okay, I want to look at David's theology because David's theology is the opposite of Rebekah. Remember, Rebekah receives a word from the Lord. Okay, so David's men are quoting a promise from God back to David. Rebekah also had a promise from God that her younger son would be the leader over her older son. And based on that promise she got from God, she thought that she had liberty and license or an excuse to act in a deceptive way towards her husband, as if the promise that she got from God gave her license to not act godly. Whereas David says, since I have a promise from God, then I don't have to do anything. See, a promise from God can either make you anxious and make you try to force it to happen, or a promise from God can make you peaceful and make you rest and make you go, oh, I've got a promise from God. I don't need to act in ways that would cause me to lose God's favor. So Rebekah and David both received promises from God. I know a lot of people in church who receive a promise from God and then they go about trying to make that promise happen. And then I know people in church who receive a promise from God and do absolutely nothing, which is the opposite extreme. And then I know people in church who receive a promise from God. They pray into it. They sow into it. They do things that are godly, but they never cross the line into doing anything ungodly. And they're not lazy, so they never would do absolutely nothing. They do the right corresponding actions for making sure that you cultivate the word that God has spoken into your life. Okay, so David had the prophetic word. His men remind him of the prophetic word. And even with his men reminding him of the prophetic word, he still has, buzzword here, character. Now, this is a very, very hard concept for people, that the thing that differentiates Saul and David is not morality, but character. Okay? If you just look at morality, Saul has more morality than David. Saul has a higher level of morality. However, God chooses David and says he's a man after his own heart because David actually has a higher level of character. And I know that may be very difficult for people, but that's the reality. That morality is not the same thing as character, and character is not the same thing as morality. And I would actually say, I know this may seem uncomfortable, that the Bible is doing a lot more character development than it's doing morality policing. But that's a whole nother soapbox for a whole nother day. All right, David now makes a covenant. He extends the covenant that he had made with Jonathan to cover Saul, which is absolutely unheard of in human history. This is actually faith. This is radical faith. To say, I believe in the promise of God so much that I'm going to make a covenant to not harm Saul. So right back to our timeless truth. While Saul is listening to others, David hears what his men have to say about the promise of God on David's life and goes, yeah, I'm not a follower. The thing that makes me a leader is that I don't listen I don't listen to sheep. I don't listen to my followers. I don't. That doesn't mean I never listen to them. That just means I'm not listening to them right now, and I don't make a habit of just listening to the people that I'm following. That while Saul is listening to his followers and continuing to make dumb decisions, David is listening to God. And that is wisdom. And I wish I could implore every leader to say, hey, this is a great Henry Ford quote. Ain't got nothing to do with God, but it's a good quote. If Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. But people don't know what they want. That's what makes a leader a leader. A leader goes, you want faster horses, but I've got this thing called a vehicle. I've got this thing called an automobile. I've got this thing called a car. And if I listen to you about what you want, you'd tell me a faster horse, but I'm not going to give you a faster horse. I'm a leader, and I've got a vision, and I'm going to give you what I'm going to innovate, and I'm going to move the ball down the field. And I think that's a massive, massive tool of leadership. Now, let me balance that out. there are incredibly wise times to listen to those who are working for you or working with you or on the team with you. If you're a leader, there are some incredible ideas that have come from people that I lead. But there's a difference between ideas coming from them and counsel coming from them. And there's so much nuance there. I hope that you're hearing me with ears of wisdom and with ears of nuance. So, all right, that's day 154. Tomorrow we got day 155. We got 1 Samuel chapter 25 to 28. And I'm pretty sure that's going to, So we got 2 more days in 1 Samuel, and then we switch over to 2 Samuel. So tomorrow, chapters 25 to 28, I'll see you right here. Get a streak going if you don't have a streak going. If you got a streak going, don't break it. I'm so proud of you. I love you. You're doing a great job. Let's keep trekking through 1 Samuel. We'll pick up right here where we left off tomorrow. I'll see you here. Love you guys. Peace. Thanks so much for joining us on the Bible Department podcast. If this episode was helpful, how about you leave a comment, share with a friend, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. To learn more about the show, head to thebibledepartment.com. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.